Story out of Chicago. A 9-year-old boy executed in broad daylight, one of the many casualties in the murder epidemic in that city. Our chief breaking news correspondent, Trace Gallagher, joins us tonight with an update to the story. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Tucker. In court, prosecutors told the jury 3 members of Chicago's Black Pea Stones gang went to a local park and saw 9-year-old Tyshawn Lee playing basketball. They talked to him, played with him, earned his trust. Then they offered to buy him a juice box, luring him into a side alley. And while 2 of the gang members stood watch, the 3rd allegedly executed the boy. Several shots, point blank, from a .40 caliber handgun. And as gruesome and heartrending as the crime sounds, investigators say the original plan was to kidnap the boy, torture him by cutting off his fingers and ears, and then kill him. And why was he shot? Because his father is in a rival gang that the suspects believe was responsible for killing one of their family members. Corey Morgan, who's accused of standing watch while the boy was shot, and Dwight Doty, accused of pulling the trigger, are being tried together. And their defense attorneys are trying to pit them against each other. Here's Corey Morgan's lawyer. Watch.
That execution of that 9-year-old boy has to come from one singularly evil person, not from a plan.
Turns out, after the shooting, Dwight Doty wrote a rap song where he jokingly referred to Tyshawn as Shorty, with a lyric that reads, quote, "Shorty couldn't take it no more." Prosecutors say the original target was going to be Tyshawn Lee's grandmother, but the gang thought killing a 9-year-old would send a clearer message. Tyshawn's father tried to retaliate for his son's death. He's now in prison for aggravated battery. Tucker.
Beyond belief. Trace Gallagher, thanks so much for that. Yep. Well, Rob Smith is the spokesman for Turning Point USA, and he joins us tonight. Rob, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks
so
for having me, Tucker.
You see the story, and your heart breaks just at the human tragedy.
Yes.
In a 9-year-old boy executed during the day. And then you wonder, where's Beto? Why isn't Beto O'Rourke in Chicago right now talking about this?
You know, the Beto O'Rourkes of the world, the mainstream media, they ignore stories like this because it doesn't fit their narrative. For Beto to try to use gun violence as the 10th way to sort of resuscitate his failing campaign, it begs the question, what are law-abiding citizens going to do to protect themselves from the criminals? Do you think these criminals will be registering their guns? Do you think these criminals will be giving up their guns? By the way, even over Labor Day weekend in Chicago, there were 7 killed, 34 wounded. We hear these stories over and over and over again, and we don't see them covered enough because they do not fit a mainstream media narrative. These people are working very hard to try to get another Democrat, to try to get a Democrat in the White House in 2020. And when you look at cities like Chicago, when you look at Baltimore, which I was just at last weekend, when you look at St. Louis, these things are happening in all of these cities that have been controlled by Democrats for the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And this is violence that is deeply affecting African Americans.
It seems like a kind of neglect to ignore it. I mean, if you look at the numbers out of Chicago, but you're absolutely right, St. Louis and Baltimore, and there are a lot of other cities like that.
Absolutely.
But the numbers are shocking. The number of people shot, the number of people murdered.
Yeah.
To not cover that at all, what does that tell you?
It tells me, honestly, that the media and the Beto O'Rourkes of the world are more concerned with pushing their narrative than they are of the actual people that are on the streets. Like your guest said before, he said that the left tells African Americans when they leave the Democratic Party that they're not black anymore. They tell gays when they leave the Democratic Party that they're not gay anymore, etc. But when you go and you tell black people that these policies have been hurting us for decades and decades and decades, and they tell you that, you know, you can't be a Republican. Look, let me tell you something. Candace Owens, Larry Elder, they say all the time, the #1 problem in the African-American community is fatherlessness. Now, I will probably tell you for sure that these young men that were in this gang that murdered that child, these people that are continuing to perpetrate this violence on these streets are men without direction. They are men that don't have jobs. They're men that did not have fathers in the home.
Yeah.
And when you say this to your community, they tell you that you're not really part of that community, which is insane.
Right. And the feminists say, well, you don't need fathers.
Absolutely, which is completely insane.
It certainly
Black
is.
boys need fathers, and I'm telling you, Tucker,
All boys
this, you know, all boys do, but black boys in particular. And let me tell you something, when I read a story like this, it breaks my heart for that child, and it also breaks my heart for these men who have been lost, and so many
agree
men like them
completely.
all across the country that are being lost.
So many American men that we don't care about. I agree.
Absolutely.
Rob, great to see you tonight. Thank you for that.
Thank you.